Let's look at the first problem. We're given angles 20 and 40 here. So in total, that's going to be 60 degrees. And the arc that we're going to be looking at is this one in red. So think of it as these two lines belong to this arc. We know that the relation between the arc and the angles is twice. So the outer arc here is twice the angle inside. So that will just be 120 degrees. Now the entire circle is going to be 360 degrees. So far we have 120, 120, and x. 120 plus 120 is 240, plus x has to be 360. So x here has to be 120 degrees. Okay. Let's look at the next one. Let's look at the first one here for x. So if we look at this segment x, the arc that opens up to, so is this. And notice this arc is a semicircle. So if I look at this whole entire arc as a semicircle, we know that the entire circle is 360 degrees. So the arc has to be half of 360, which is 180. And now if we look at y, that also shares the same arc. So that also is 180 degrees. Okay. We know that the relation between x and the arc has to be half. So x has to be 90 degrees. Y is also half of the arc, so that's going to be 90 degrees as well. So x and y here are both 90 degrees. Let's go down to number 3. We have a quadrilateral inscribed in a circle. We know that the opposite angles are going to be supplementary. In other words, 50 plus y has to be 180. So y has to be 130 degrees. We also know that 110 plus x are supplementary, and those have to add up to 180 degrees. So x is going to be 70 degrees. Okay, number 4. So here we have the triangle with angle y. And let's see. Well, first let's start with this. We know that this arc right here is 50 degrees. And that's going to be the same as this angle here. And this angle is supplementary to the 50 degrees. So those have to add up to 180, which makes this angle 130. So if I look at now the arc that's formed by this here, so that will be the one. That's going to deal with x. X here also has to be 130 degrees. Okay. And notice it's because this is a semicircle, right? Because you go down along this line, this whole thing is a semicircle. So this is 50, that means this has to be 130. Okay, so that verifies it there. But so that's x. Now I want to find y. So let's see. Let's go back here. Just to make it look nicer. So this is 130. I want to solve for y. Now 50. Oh, there we go. So let's take a look at this angle here. This angle is going to have the same arc, or that's going to have, we're going to relate it to the arc 50. And it's going to be half of that arc, which is going to be 25 degrees. Now, y, 130 and 25 have to add up to 180 because we have a right triangle. I'm sorry, we have a triangle. So 25 plus 130 is 155. So y has to be 25 degrees. So y is 25, x is 130. Okay, let's go to number 5. Let's look at y here. That arc is 80, so y has to be half of 80, which is 40. And same thing with x. X is going to share the same arc, so this is going to also share 80, so this also has to be 40 degrees. For 6, x is going to be the average of 120 and 100. So I'm going to add those two up, divided by 2. 120 plus 100 is 220, and that will just be 110. So x is 110 degrees. Let's go down to 7. We know that 95 is going to be the average of x and 80. Okay. So we're going to multiply by 2 to get 190 is equal to x plus 80. So x has to be 110 degrees. For 8, x is going to be half of the difference between 100 and 40. So we're going to subtract 140 divided by 2. So that would be 60 over 2, which is 30 degrees. So x here is 30 degrees. Now for 9, we know that 40 is going to be half of the difference between 200 and x. So if I multiply the 2 to the other side, I get 80 equals 200 minus x, and so x has to be 120 degrees. Now for 10, we're given that x is an angle measure formed by the tangent and secant. So just so we're clear, this line right here is the secant line. And this line right here is the tangent line. So the outside, so think of this part right here, is 240 degrees, and that leaves the other part, so we'll denote by green, is 120. So this has to be half of that, which is 60 degrees. So x here is 60. Going down to 11 here, we have concentric circles. So this dot right here is the center. And because the arc is 75 degrees, so is this. And now if we look at the bigger circle, that's also going to be 75 degrees. So you can kind of think of it as you have two similar circles. All you're doing is taking the little circle and scaling it proportionally. So the angle should not change. Okay, last one here. We have angle X and 100. So I want to find what X is. So here we want to be careful. So it's a little tricky. We know we're given this diameter here. So this whole thing has to be 180 degrees because that's a semicircle. If the part in red is 100, the part in green has to be 80. So X is going to be half of 100 minus 80, and that's going to be 20 over 2, which is 10 degrees. And that's our final answer.